Hey everybody, welcome back to Movies You Missed Podcast, episode 118. We are going in a different direction today than we did last week, so this won't be so action-packed, but it'll still be fun and interesting and informative for all of you that are fans of the late, great Robin Williams. Vee, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, John. I think this was a really nice pivot for us, considering we've done some action movies the last couple weeks.
Yeah.
And that's been really fun, especially because it's summertime. I really like the theme of picking movies that fit the season that we're in. But we haven't done this yet, even though we've had a podcast for 2 years, and I'm really happy that we finally are.
I am as well. A big fan of who we're going to be honoring today, and we love honoring people, especially in the entertainment industry. So I think, like you said, Vee, it's going to be a good time. But before we do any of that, for those of you that are brand new here on our 118th episode, welcome to Movies You Missed Podcast. Vee and myself have been in the entertainment industry for over 25 years. We are also friends, so I'm excited for this episode. I'm excited for this podcast, as usual. And also, right before we jump into Vee's pick, this week we do love to discuss the movies that we saw in theaters or on streaming this week. And I'm curious, Vee, did you see anything in theaters or on streaming this last week?
I actually visited my parents last weekend, so unfortunately I didn't see anything new. My dad and I just watched some oldies but goodies.
Awesome.
But I know that you went back to the theater a couple times to make up for the last couple weeks, so I'm very excited to hear about your experiences.
I did make it back to the theaters last week, and I was so excited to do so. If you follow us on social media, you saw my reels. If not, I will get into them shortly, because I want to get into the streaming film that I watched, which was actually a suggestion by my wife. Starring Emma Roberts, this movie is a new Amazon Prime movie called Space Cadet.
I've never even heard of that film.
I hadn't heard of it either, but my wife is an Emma Roberts fan, and I have worked with Emma Roberts, and she was very sweet to me the entire time I worked with her, so I will support her. Yeah, and the movie was entertaining. It's about this young girl that wants to go to space, and that's pretty much all I'm going to give away because, I don't want to, we don't spoil anything here, but there were some very entertaining moments, some cute moments, and a lot of fun space NASA stuff going down in the movie. So if you're looking for a nice little light afternoon movie, I think it's PG-13, but I would say it's good for about 11 and older. I think it's important to kind of show this movie to young women also, just because it's a female empowerment movie and, not a lot of... And we still don't have a whole lot of female astronauts, but that is changing, and that's always good.
Awesome.
Yeah, again, Amazon Prime Space Cadet starring Emma Roberts.
Okay.
And I also did see 2 movies in theaters. I will start with the one that I saw last in theaters, which stars Scarlett Johansson, Channing Tatum, Woody Harrelson, and Ray Romano. This movie was called Fly Me to the Moon, which was an Apple-produced film about the 1969 moon landing. And what was very cool about it, actually, was that Scarlett Johansson got top bill. Channing Tatum did not.
Oh, okay.
They're both very prominent characters in the movie. Again, not going to spoil what that movie is about, but it does take place around 1969 during the time when Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins went up into space on the Apollo 11 mission. Very entertaining movie also. Very light, very funny. Again, another great afternoon movie. I think it's PG-13 because they say fuck one time. Another movie I think would be appropriate for like 11 and up, especially for young girls to watch.
I actually think the trailers made it look pretty good, so I'm glad you enjoyed yourself.
Yes, I watched the trailer on Apple, I think, about a month ago, and I kind of forgot about it, and then I was scrolling through my Regal app, and it was playing in theaters. And I was very happy that it was playing in theaters because, again, it's Apple-produced. Not all the Apple movies do go to theaters. So it was cool to check this one out, and, I mean, it had a great soundtrack, a lot of 1960s music, and the costumes were amazing, cinematography was good. Yeah, definitely an enjoyable movie. I think you'll like it.
Okay.
And the other movie that I saw was a movie that I was very excited to see because I am a big fan of Yorgos Lanthimos. We've talked about my love for Killing of a Sacred Deer and Poor Things and The Lobster. So I went and saw Kinds of Kindness, starring Emma Stone, Willem Dafoe, and Jesse Plemons. I had not seen a trailer for this movie. I had only seen the posters and knew who was in it, especially after Poor Things. And again, Killing of a Sacred Deer, I will watch just about anything Yorgos Lanthimos is behind. This is a 2-hour and 44-minute movie. It is a vignette movie, an anthology movie, if you will. And I was the only one in theaters, which was sad, but at the same time, didn't make me feel guilty for saying, as audibly as I could, what the fuck is going on in this movie? Or in this vignette of this anthology movie. Yeah, I was kind of speechless at the end of it because it just kind of ends on you and it doesn't really have a solid, like, linear ending. But, I mean, the performances were fantastic. Jesse Plemons was out of this world. Willem Dafoe in the third one, out of control. And if you are a fan of Killing of a Sacred Deer, The Lobster, The Favorite, Poor Things, check this movie out. It's very... what the fuck, for sure. I know, right when it ended, I pulled my phone out and I texted you, Vee. I was like, what in the holy what the fucking hell was that? And that's exactly how I felt and still feel, because I'm still thinking about it. I'm still haunted by this movie. And it's not a scary movie. It's just, what the fuck? Like, it was just so insane.
You know a movie is really weird when John says that.
I know, right? Oh, God. I walked out of there and I just was shaking my head and laughing. And I was like, what the fuck? I just couldn't. And I got home and Amy's like, how was the movie? I'm like, well, it was... yeah, it was crazy. And again, performances were amazing. The music was great. It was really cool to see the gentleman that voices Wade from Elemental in this movie as well.
Yeah.
So, very, very entertaining movie. I'm very glad I saw it in theaters. I recommend it, but not to everyone. And Vee, I don't think you would enjoy it at all.
I appreciate that recommendation, or that caution, as it were. But
Yeah.
would you, A, see this movie again, and B, own it?
I would see this movie again, and the own it part would have to come after I see it again to see what I still think about it.
Okay.
Because after Poor Things, I was like, gotta own that movie. Same
Right.
with Killing of a Sacred Deer, which I still
Right.
don't own either of them, but they are
You would.
movies that will, I will be adding to my collection at some point. And I was thinking about that like halfway through the second vignette of this movie, and I was like, is this something that I would want in the house? And because I know Amy will never watch it, and at the same time, whenever you come over, maybe you'll be curious enough to want to see it.
No. I didn't like Poor Things, and that's
I know
less
you didn't, I
weird
know.
than this movie.
No, I don't think so, though. I think Poor Things is so
I thought you
so
said it was.
different. And no. This is more of like a human piece. And again, what the fuck? Like, that's all I can say. That's really all I can say.
All right.
Yeah. So it felt fantastic to go back to the movies, and I wanted to try and squeeze Longlegs in this last week, but I'm going to have to do that in the next 7 days because I really want to see Longlegs, and I have to stay off of Twitter now because everybody is posting about Longlegs, and it's kind of getting annoying, and I don't want to lose the want to see the movie. So I will see that and probably something else because Princess Mononoke is actually going to be playing again at a Fathom event, so I'm going to check that out too.
Awesome.
But we'll see what other new movies come out, but definitely Longlegs in the next week.
All right.
Sweet. Well, as we like to say here at Movies You Miss Podcast, please do keep theaters alive. Keep physical media alive as well, since we just heard of the sad news of Redbox closing their box doors, and that is very, very sad.
Yes, in my 20s, I used to use Redbox all the time, actually, when I really wanted a movie that night versus waiting for Netflix to deliver the DVDs.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. I remember when Redbox showed up, I was living in North Hollywood, and I actually walked over to Blockbuster Video, and I saw the kiosk outside of the grocery store that was in the same parking lot.
Whoa.
So I went to Blockbuster. I think I did like a 5 for $25 deal, walked by the Redbox, and ended up renting a movie because it was something new, and I was like, I'm going to give this a shot. It's only $1. And up until now, I'm still renting from Redbox. I don't do it as often as I should, but I still do use Redbox, especially when nothing's available on streaming.
Yes, it was really convenient for instantaneous needs, especially before streaming really got going.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But enough of all of that. We will miss you, Redbox. Thank you for your 20 years of service to us film lovers and film renters and physical media appreciators. All right, well, Vee, I think it's time to jump into one of your underrated Robin Williams picks for episode 118. What do you say?
I think that's a great idea.
Fantastic.
As most of you know who've listened to more than a couple episodes of ours, we really love to pick underrated films from actors and directors, and so of course we were not going to pick some of the more popular films of Robin Williams, although we will mention them a little bit later on in the podcast when we discuss his credits.
Yes.
There were a couple I could have chosen from, but for me, because this movie speaks to me on such a deep level, I really wanted to go with it. I haven't seen it in a couple years just because it is so affecting, but it is beautiful. I've loved it since it came out. Unfortunately, I didn't see it in theaters because I think I was too young at the time, and I don't think I drove myself over to the theater at that point. But when I did see it, it really did leave a mark, and I've been watching it ever since the early 2000s. And so this is 1998's What Dreams May Come.
Nice.
This movie's really intense, but I was thinking about it when I was watching it this last time, and it's actually one of the few movies where Robin Williams is the hero.
Oh, interesting.
Where he's leading the charge, and he's a very strong character, but he's not funny.
Yeah.
And I couldn't think of really any other films where he embodies a character like this, and that's another reason why I love it. This film is actually based on a book written by Richard Matheson. The book came out in 1978.
Whoa, really?
Yeah.
Wow. When I saw the credit about the book, I was, of course, kicking myself like, damn, I should have at least read this book before seeing it this time around, because I have not watched What Dreams May Come in maybe 10 years.
Okay. I haven't read the book either. I actually tried to read it. I got about 70 pages in, and it was just so different than the movie, and I love the movie so much, I put it down and didn't go back to it. I might try to pick it up again. Richard Matheson is actually a pretty good writer, and I have a couple of his other books as well.
Sweet.
He's actually the credited author of the movie Real Steel with Hugh Jackman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I never saw that one.
He also wrote the book I Am Legend.
Oh, wow. Okay.
He wrote the story for Stir of Echoes, a movie with Kevin Bacon that came out in the 90s, early 2000s.
Yeah, Stir of Echoes is good.
Yeah. And he also wrote 16 episodes of the original Twilight Zone.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's a really good writer. But I'm a big fan of this movie that was based on his book, and it centers on Chris Nielsen, who meets a woman when he's traveling in Europe. Her name's Annie, and they immediately fall in love. The beginning of this movie, though, rivals Up for the saddest beginning of a movie ever.
For sure.
Because in the first few minutes of this movie, it really flashes through several scenes and sets up the entire story. And it has to, because the rest of the story is really important, and so they need a lot of exposition really quickly in order to get us going.
Agreed, yeah.
And so Chris meets Annie, they fall in love, they get married, they have 2 kids, the 2 kids start growing up, and these kids are now teenagers. Well, at least their son is. Their daughter looks to be around middle school. And they're all getting ready one morning. The nanny takes the kids to school, and Chris, in a voiceover, which there are many of them in this movie, and what he says is, this is the last time we saw them alive. In the first 5 minutes, their children die in this film.
Yeah.
We then flash forward after the funerals. It's 4 years later. Chris and Annie are still together, but they're struggling, as anyone would expect, of course, of a grieving couple.
Yeah, definitely.
Chris is leaving work one day, and he actually gets killed in a car accident.
Yeah.
So in the first few minutes of this film, almost the entire family has been killed.
Yeah.
So I'm just prefacing.
Brutal.
Yes, it is. It's very heart-wrenching. But the reason why is because the entirety of the rest of the film takes place in the afterlife. And I love how this is written. I love how it's shown. Chris Nielsen, played by Robin Williams, goes up to heaven, and he is told that everybody creates their own.
Yes, I liked that.
Me too. And his heaven is actually based on a painting that Annie had done previously, because in fact she's an artist, she works for a museum, and they had both bonded over art and painting when they first met. And what he creates, that's the way my heaven would look. It's absolutely beautiful. And of course his dog is there, which I loved.
Oh yeah, that was a great moment.
And there's a saying that his family had said in the past, the place we all go can't be bad.
Place where we all go can't be bad, can it, girl?
Mm-hmm.
And I really like that as a theme to this movie. And he's actually assisted through his transition by a man named Albert, played by Cuba Gooding Jr. I really love this character, but there was some backlash about it, which I'll get into in a little bit.
Really?
Yeah, and Chris is then navigating through his afterlife. He's looking for his children, he misses his wife, but he's able to adjust. Unfortunately, a wrench is thrown all into that, though, because shortly after all of this, and rightly so, honestly, if I'm looking at it as an adult, Annie kills herself. And I totally understand the devastation she must have faced because her whole family is gone. And so I didn't blame her for this act and completely empathized, honestly. She also goes to the afterlife, but because of the manner of her death, she doesn't go to Chris. And she doesn't go to heaven. And so the rest of the movie is Chris fighting this entire system that's been set up for the afterlife about where his wife went, because he truly believes that she is his soulmate and is trying to prove to Albert that she is and convince Albert that he needs to go find her because where she's stuck, it'd be horrific if she was stuck there for eternity.
Oh, yeah.
And Chris loves her so much, he's willing to risk everything to go find her. This is a very heavy movie. I know by its description, I might have turned off a lot of people, but I swear to you, it's very beautiful. It's uplifting. It's intense. It'll make you cry. It certainly makes me cry every time I watch it. But at the same time, it really makes you think, and it gives you a lot of hope, which is, I know, surprising to hear based on what I just summarized. But
Yeah.
it really does, and it's gorgeously shot. Robin Williams is incredible in this role. I think it's absolutely a must-watch for anyone who's a Robin Williams fan.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that I really like about it is how much it makes you think about the afterlife and what happens to us. And one of the things that Albert says to Chris is a quote that really struck me, and that's the audio clip I wanted to use this week.
Thought is real. Physical is the illusion. Ironic, huh?
And so before I get into the cast and how gorgeous I think this movie is, John has been pretty mum over the last week about this film, even though I've known he's seen it previously, so I'm kind of shocked he hasn't told me anything. So now I really want to know what you thought in your most recent watch of What Dreams May Come.
Yeah, let's jump in. It was not as affecting as I remember it being. Oddly enough.
Oh, bummer.
It was very strange watch for me this time around. I don't know why, but
did you eat some bad chicken or something beforehand?
No. I was feeling good. I was feeling fine. The last time I watched this movie was actually within a week after Robin Williams did pass away.
Ugh, yeah.
And the movie hit me extremely hard around then, and even before that moment, I had watched the movie 2 or 3 other times, and it was a very heavy, intense movie. And not that it isn't, it still is. I still, think like a lot of the themes and stuff going on and what Chris is trying to accomplish in the movie and try to convince Albert of, especially in the afterlife, is very compelling, very interesting, very thought-provoking. It's very much like, kind of like going back to the fountain, like what happens when you die? Like, are you going to be able to construct your own whatever it is, right? And I liked all of that about it, but there were moments in the movie this time around that made it feel very made for TV for me.
Ooh,
and
ouch.
I know, I feel really fucking bad saying this because overall the movie is still very good. I like the movie, but there are moments though where I'm just kind of like, this feels weird. Like, I don't know. Maybe I was in a weird funk the day I watched it. I don't know, but I still liked it. I still enjoyed watching it. I think the cinematography is amazing. Robin Williams does a great job. The actress that plays Annie is fantastic. The moment when he's on that ridge in the flowers with his dog and he starts screaming her name always gets me crying. Like, it's just, it's so intense. And I like the whole idea of, again, building your own afterlife, thought is real, etc., etc. There were just, again, moments out of the 2 hours that I was like, this doesn't feel right to me. And maybe it was meant to be that way, like maybe it was meant to be one of those movies that really made you think and made you question reality as opposed to something else. And, if that's the case, then they succeeded. However, I still like the movie. I'm not going to not watch it again. I think you did a great job in picking this movie because this is a very underrated Robin Williams performance.
Thank you.
I remember when the movie came out and first watching it with my family, we all just looked at each other at the end of it like, holy shit. That's a heavy one, especially for Robin Williams because this was 90s and we had Aladdin and Mrs. Doubtfire and a couple other of his comedies. And maybe that's another reason too, is watching it this time around, obviously Robin Williams has been gone for 10 years.
Oh my God.
But 2014 was the unfortunate reality of when he passed and still very heartbreaking. But you think out of all of the movies that he did and the stand-up comedy that he did and his interviews and everything like that, and then watching this movie, this is one of those movies that made me think more about Robin Williams as a person than as an actor. Mm-hmm. Because I wonder if this was just he read the book, he read the script and was like, I accept this as a potentiality for the afterlife. I'm going to bring this character into that and bring myself into that. I don't know.
No,
but
I like that theory though.
Again, still a very good movie. Cuba Gooding Jr. is great. Every performance is good in this movie. There's not a weak link in this movie, including the dog. But that whole sequence when he wakes up in the flower bed and he's able to squeeze it into paint, it's just it's gorgeous. I mean, it's beautiful. And then, of course, there's the moments where you're like, ooh, this is really disturbing.
Yes.
And I feel like they pushed the envelope for sure, and I think they could have done it a little bit more, but then it would have had an R rating and not so much a success. However, still, again, good movie, just some moments that threw me off, but overall, it was a good revisit, and I'm going to give it like another year or two before I watch it again, but I'm definitely going to watch it again. It's going to be like one of those, it's always been one of the go-to Robin Williams movies for me because it's so out of character. I don't want to say it's out of character for Robin Williams, but it just felt that way, you know? It was like...
It's not what we expect from him.
Thank you, yes. It's not what we expect from him. He's detaching himself from the comedy. He's going into the drama aspect, even though Good Will Hunting had just come out, right? Like, he had literally just won the Oscar for it.
But he's still light in that movie, you know, making lots of jokes
exactly.
and stuff.
Yeah, and this one, again, dealing with life and death, and, you know, it just makes me wonder, like, what his thought process was playing Chris, you know? Like, I'm just extremely curious.
Regarding pushing the envelope, I totally agree. I think for 98, it certainly did. But if this film was made now, it'd be much more intense, especially the second half of the film, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
But I think that could be a really interesting alternate universe to make it in 2024, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you're right, this movie is really thought-provoking. That's the perfect description. It's one of those movies that you sit for about 10 minutes on your couch after watching it, and you're completely silent, and you just have to go through everything.
Yep.
This movie is very similar to my very first pick of this podcast, though, because The Secret Life of Walter Mitty, first of all, it's a comedian going way outside of character, Ben Stiller playing a serious role.
Sure.
It's very imaginative, and it makes you think.
Yeah, very true.
So I often group those two movies together, even though the plots couldn't be more different from each other, right?
Yeah.
And I'm curious what parts of the film, if you can get a little bit more detailed into the sections that made you think it was made for TV. Is it the dialogue? Is it the visual effects? I'm curious.
There were 3 moments in the movie in between like the hour and 15 to hour and a half mark where for whatever reason the dialogue just felt a little bit too cheesy.
Maybe forced?
Yeah, a little bit forced, and it was the moment where Cuba Gooding Jr. kind of like screams at Chris about not giving up. For whatever reason, it just felt like it was like a reshoot. If you think, you know, like, it's just like there was a feel that took me out of the feeling of the movie.
Let's raise the tension, people.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Like the director is screaming behind the monitor, big energy,
yeah,
which is what so many directors that I've worked with scream on TV shows and other movies. It's like, that's not directing. But anyway, and there was another moment with another character when he was in heaven. That's, again, felt like a pickup shot that it was almost like, you know, the director was like, I came up with this idea, you know, like either after wrap or the morning of a new shoot day. And it wasn't anything that had been in the original script or anything like that. Just took me out of the feel of the movie. Like, I was feeling the movie until those moments, and I was like, oh, okay, I'm in reality again.
Right.
And yeah, those 2 moments, there might have been another one, but I was like, this just feels weird.
Forced emotional stakes. It's always a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Well, I'm glad it's only a couple pieces, and I'm really happy to hear that the movie still holds up for you and that you still do enjoy it. But I think that's fair. I do think, again, though, this is 1998. That was kind of commonplace.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's true. There was a lot of that in a lot of movies.
Mm-hmm. So product of the times as well. But I appreciate you calling that out. But can we talk about the visual effects and the set design of this film? You use a really good descriptor, sumptuous, feast for the eyes, when talking about films. And I think this movie embodies both of those to a T. Yeah. It's really imaginative, like The Cell in a lot of ways.
Ah, good point. Yes, a lot of color schemes that are similar.
Yeah, just a lot less insane and murdery. But it does remind me of The Cell in a lot of ways, just in terms of that imagination and things being brought into the conscious that are outside our realm of reality. And I really like that about this film.
Agreed. It's true.
I like that it's very obvious that they're not on Earth anymore.
Very much so. You do feel like this is a real place.
Absolutely, yes. And I would love to think that this is what's going to happen next.
That would be pretty awesome. It does make me wonder, you know, do writers, producers, directors, actors consult people that have been through near-death experiences for stuff like this, that claim they've been to the other side, that have gone through that tunnel? And the images that we are treated to in this movie are what somebody actually did see when they were about to die but got resuscitated.
I think it really depends on who it is, right? And maybe Richard Matheson writing the book did, but Robin Williams is a huge method actor. so he didn't. And
Sure.
And so I think it really depends on how people approach their role and just their job in making a movie. And I think that's true for each of us, right? You and I approach researching, talking about our movies on this podcast in different ways.
It's true.
And so I think it depends, but I would certainly like to talk to people who have had near-death experiences if I was in this role, not necessarily for the imagery, but for the feelings.
Sure.
Tell me about how you felt. Give me an example of the emotions that came up when this was happening or when you were coming back, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where I would dive into, but I do think that's a great question. How would you research the role if you were playing Chris?
I would try and track down people that claim to have died and, been to a different dimension or realm or plane. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because it's so funny, like when so many other characters die in a comedy movie, right? They come back and they're like, oh my God, it was so beautiful. I've never seen something so amazing. And it's like, well, is that just based off of, somebody however many years ago that was like, oh yeah, I died but came back and I've been there, and it was amazing. And so that just like, like the game of telephone, right? It just like resonates through human history and everyone's like, well, it's supposed to be beautiful. So yeah, I would be very curious. You always hear about people that have died and then like floated over their body, but then fallen back into their body and stuff like that. So, are you able to go to another plane dimension, or are you unfortunately going to walk the planet as a ghost? Just curious, like what people have seen, what they've experienced. So yeah, I would try and track them down. And I'm sure there's, a directory of some kind that you can find with all these people. You pretty much go to the hospital and be like, to who,
I'm sure it's on the internet somewhere.
Well, that also, yeah, I'm sure you can find it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I do really like how they handled ghosts in this movie as well. I thought that was a really interesting little tidbit. It's not the main piece of the movie, but it is a really cool explanation of how ghosts would be handled in this reality.
Yeah.
And I think that's accurate too. It makes sense.
Yeah, and that's funny. It's like, oh, well, that makes sense. Like, yeah, but does it? Like, do we know? We don't know. Like,
Nope.
Yeah, it's a fascinating thing, the afterlife. I've always been fascinated by it.
As long as I don't fall into the 8th dimension from Buckaroo Banzai, I'll be fine. That looks scary.
Yeah, as long as I don't fall into any of the multiverses from that terrible Marvel movie, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse, then I'm sure I'll be fine too.
So this movie, as we said, stars Robin Williams. We're going to talk about his credits after John's movie because, of course, he picked a Robin Williams movie as well. So instead,
Indeed.
I will talk about the supporting cast. Annie, as you said, I really like that you loved every actor in this film. I did agree with you. I think they all did a great job.
Oh, yeah.
Annie is actually played by Annabelle Sciorra. She stars in The Hand That Rocks the Cradle, which is one of my favorite thrillers, and it should be on my list in October at some point.
Oh, yeah, I've never seen it.
Oh, my God. Rebecca De Mornay is in it. It's such a good film.
All right.
Very
Throw it on the
creepy.
list then, for sure.
Okay, cool. And then she also stars in a Sylvester Stallone movie that I've mentioned in passing a couple times called Copland.
Oh, yeah.
So she's a good actress, and she was so good in this role. I think this is the best role I've seen her in.
She was very good.
Just so great at playing devastated without overacting.
Yes, agreed.
And that's just so hard to do, and my heart just shattered for her throughout most of this movie, actually.
Yeah.
And as we said, Cuba Gooding Jr. plays Albert, the man who helps Chris when he first gets to heaven. Cuba Gooding Jr., one of his first ever credits was actually as a little boy getting a bad haircut in Coming to America when they're in the barbershop.
That's right. Oh, yeah. So cool.
That movie's so funny.
It is.
And then he was in Boys in the Hood, another movie that will break your heart.
Oh, big time.
He's in Outbreak.
Oh, was he really?
He's good in that movie.
Oh, cool.
He's also in The Tuskegee Airmen, a really good made-for-TV film. He's in As Good as It Gets, American Gangster, which you covered a few episodes ago.
Yeah. Yeah, he's good in that one, too.
He is. He, of course, is in Jerry Maguire. He won an Oscar for it.
Yep.
But my favorite role of his is in Men of Honor.
Yeah, still need to see that one.
Yes, you do. It still boggles my mind that your grandpa or your father never showed you that film.
Yeah, haven't gotten to it yet. We will.
It's okay, you will, for sure. And at one point, Chris finds a tracker. That's his credited name in this film.
Yeah.
He's played by Max von Sydow, who I've spoken about briefly because he was in Shutter Island. And you spoke about a lot because he was in The Exorcist.
That's right.
He's awesome. He was also in 3 Days of the Condor, Flash Gordon. Flash! And He was also in Conan the Barbarian, Never Say Never Again, which was a Sean Connery James Bond film.
There you go.
He was also in the original Dune.
Oh, sweet. Still haven't seen the original.
He and Robin Williams were in another film together called Awakenings.
Oh, yeah.
He also was in Judge Dredd with Sylvester Stallone.
Nice.
And my favorite role of his, a movie we will absolutely be covering in the future on this podcast. Not sure which one of us will cover it. I did see it was on your list recently, though.
Oh.
He stars in Minority Report with Tom Cruise.
Oh, yeah. Oh, man. He's so
movie.
good in Minority Report.
Oh, he's
Everybody
so good. He's
That
so
is
good in everything he did.
Yeah, he was badass.
Yeah, Max von Sydow was one of the great ones for sure. Ron Bass wrote this film, or at least the adaptation, I mean. He wrote a ton. First of all, he wrote the adaptation to Snow Falling on Cedars, which Max von Sydow was also in.
Oh, wow.
He's also written Entrapment,
Oh, okay.
a great Sean Connery, Catherine Zeta-Jones movie.
Yeah.
He wrote Stepmom, which you and I don't like.
No.
But he also wrote How Stella Got Her Groove Back, My Best Friend's Wedding, Waiting to Exhale, Dangerous Minds, When a Man When a Man Loves a Woman, The Joy Luck Club, that's another adaptation, Sleeping with the Enemy, which is a great Julia Roberts film,
Oh, yeah.
and Rain Man.
My gosh.
Yeah, Ron Bass.
He was busy in the 90s.
He was really good writer.
Yeah.
And because this film is so gorgeous, of course I want to talk about the director of photography.
Oh, definitely.
Eduardo Serra is a cinematographer who was born in Portugal. His other movies include Unbreakable, which is also a very pretty film, now that I think about it.
Unbreakable is beautifully shot, yeah.
Yeah. The Girl with the Pearl Earring.
Hey, ScarJo.
Mm-hmm. Blood Diamond, which I know you like.
Oh, yeah. Blood Diamond's good.
And the last two Harry Potter films, The Deathly Hallows Part 1 and 2.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. Though the score of this film it's not iconic like Jurassic Park or Last of the Mohicans, but it is beautiful, and it certainly adds to the story.
Oh, yeah. It's a great soundtrack.
Michael Kamen was the composer on this film, and he has composed a lot. Speaking of the 90s, holy shit. Okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, brace yourself.
All right.
He composed Highlander, which
okay.
was also composed with Queen, so that must have been a really fun job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He composed all 4 Lethal Weapon movies, Die Hard 1 through 3, Roadhouse, Robin Hood, The Prince of Thieves, which is a very good score.
Yeah.
He also worked with Bryan Adams on the iconic song from that movie.
Which one?
I do it for you. Isn't that it?
Oh, is that from Robin Hood?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's like one of Bryan Adams' most famous songs.
Yeah. Everything I do,
Yeah.
I do it for you. Totally nothing but airy throat singing. Total 90s.
Okay, but he also composed The Three Musketeers, which you and I both love, and it has
nice.
a great score.
Oh, yeah. Three Musketeers is awesome.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Holland's Opus, Live Action 101 Dalmatians, Event Horizon,
Oh!
From the Earth to the Moon, which I know you love.
Oh, my God.
The Iron Giant.
What?
Yeah. Frequency.
Whoa.
The
Oh, my God.
The original X-Men, so the first one was directed by
sweet.
Bryan Singer.
Yeah.
Band of Brothers, which has a great score.
Oh, my God.
And the Kevin Costner Western Open Range.
Damn.
Michael Kamen.
Wow. Very, very awesome. He is a very good composer.
Unsung composer in Hollywood
Yeah,
who is fantastic.
definitely.
So
Absolutely.
let's give him a lot of props.
Big time.
Another reason why this film hits me hard personally is that most of it was filmed in Northern California.
Oh, really?
Angel Falls is the inspiration for Heaven.
Okay.
And then when they meet on the lake in the beginning of this film, it was actually done at Glacier National Park, which is one of my all-time favorite places on this planet.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah. And then the rest of it, when they're alive, was all filmed in the Bay Area, which was really cool because that's where Robin Williams lived, actually.
Oh, cool. I did not know that at all.
That tunnel that Chris gets into the car accident, that's actually on the Bay Bridge when it goes into Treasure Island. So I know that tunnel really well. And yes, you could have a horrific car accident in there.
Oh, wow.
It was also filmed in Muir Woods. That's where he and his son go for that hike when it's raining. And Fioli Estate, which is a beautiful estate down below San Francisco that I've been to multiple times.
Sweet.
Yeah, and so there's a bunch of locations that are really recognizable for anyone who's spent a lot of time in Northern California. And that's also really meaningful because Robin Williams, as I said, he used to live in San Francisco. I knew where his house was because it was kind of an open secret for people who lived in San Francisco. And then he had moved to Tiburon, which was on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge. And so the tunnel that's coming from the rest of Northern California onto the Golden Gate Bridge, it's actually been renamed the Robin Williams Tunnel, and it's painted with a rainbow. And I think that's
cool.
So wonderful. Yeah. And as a lot of listeners know, we always really love when we can recognize some of the filming locations.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
At different movies we picked. So I'm really glad I could share where some of the filming took place.
Definitely.
Annabella Sciorra does a great job as Annie in this film. She originally had no interest in the role at all.
Really?
She thought it would be way too intense and sad.
Oh, wow.
Fair.
Yeah.
She did a read-through with Robin, and that convinced her to do it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Originally, Michelle Pfeiffer and Meryl Streep turned down the role.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Michelle Pfeiffer could have been really cool, I think.
I was just going to say Michelle Pfeiffer over Streep, for sure.
Definitely. I agree.
If I were a casting agent, I would have been like, yeah, let's get Pfeiffer in there. With Pfeiffer's eyes, that would have been awesome.
Well, also playing that devastation at the beginning of the film, I could picture Michelle Pfeiffer better in that role.
Sure. Yeah, I agree.
So, regarding the character of Albert in this film, played by Cuba Gooding Jr., this is one of the main films that has given rise to the trope and the term magical Negro.
Oh.
Which is a term that I'm sure you have heard a lot over the years. And it's true, and it's fair. It's certainly a fair criticism. Spike Lee coined this term.
Okay.
During his early 2000s college campuses tour, which I actually went to. I went to one of his talks when he was visiting my college.
Oh, cool.
And so I heard him talk about this, and I agreed with him at the time, and I still agree with him today. And what it is the idea of this magical Negro who is just this black character who exists solely to teach a white person something, some sort of lesson, right?
Interesting, yeah.
And in his speeches, he used not only What Dreams May Come as an example, but also The Family Man with Nicolas Cage.
Oh, Don Cheadle.
The Legend of Bagger Vance.
Oh, okay.
Will Smith.
Yeah.
The Green Mile.
Ah, yes.
Right?
Yeah.
It's a fair criticism, and what he said was, how is it that black people have these powers, these magical powers, but they only use them for the benefit of white people? And so I think that's really important for us to talk about. Thank God it's not used that much anymore. And it was, in fact, a problem. I agree that it's a bit of an issue in this movie. The character of Albert is a little more complex than that. However, the critique should not be discounted.
Sure, yeah.
So that is something to think about when watching this film. Now, the original prints of this movie were stored at a video vault at Universal Studios. They were lost in that June 1st, 2008 backlot fire.
Oh, damn. I remember that.
Yeah, a lot of movies were, and unfortunately, What Dreams May Come was one of them. Yeah.
Damn, that sucks.
Especially because this film is so vibrant and, like we talked about, it's film stock, right?
Yeah.
It was shot on Fuji Velvia. That film is usually used for still photography and landscapes.
Oh, okay.
Because it has a very high color saturation.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Which makes sense given this movie, right? They needed something like that. So
sure.
Fuji Velvia was what was used, and I think that was a really, really great idea by the cinematographer Eduardo Serra.
For sure.
Good match for this film.
It was a very beautifully shot movie, that's for sure.
Yeah, and the special effects held up pretty well overall.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, I was surprised.
It was nominated for 2 Oscars. Even though it did not do well in theaters, this movie had a budget of $85 million, which makes sense given the amount of visual effects and also the star power in this movie.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense.
However, in the box office, it only earned $55 million.
Oh, yikes.
I believe it made it all back and a little bit extra with DVD and VHS sales.
Sure.
But it still did not do well in the box office. However, despite that, it was nominated for 2 Oscars. Best Art Direction and Set Decoration.
Oh, cool.
Sense. It lost to Shakespeare in Love.
Oh, jeez.
Such
it was
bullshit.
That year.
Yeah. However, it did win Best Visual Effects.
Oh, awesome.
So that's cool.
Completely deserved, yeah, for sure.
And ironically, the title of this movie is derived by one of William Shakespeare's plays.
Is it really?
Yes.
Oh.
From Hamlet in Act 3, Scene 1 specifically. To sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause.
All right. And the opening of that is Asleep a Chance to Dream.
Mm-hmm.
That is used in one of my favorite comedies with Paul Rudd and Seann William Scott. Role models when they go LARPing.
Oh my God.
And the one actor, Joe Trulio, I think is his name. Maybe I'm saying it wrong, but he says, "Asleep a chance to dream. Hail you, Nesta," and like continues on, and they're LARPing. So it's cracked me up, made me laugh very hard. I did not know that was a Shakespeare term, so now I'm going to laugh even harder now. That's funny.
Thank you for ruining that moment for my movie.
Oh, no, wasn't trying to ruin it at all. I just thought it was funny.
No, we were getting too serious. It's fine.
Okay.
Anyway, so that's what dreams may come.
Awesome.
It's Robin Williams. We got to be laughing at some point in this
That's
episode.
true. Yeah. Good point.
And so that means it's time for John to discuss his very underrated, on two different ends, because not only is this underrated for the director, but also underrated for Robin Williams.
Yeah, big time.
His pick that I'd never seen before. John, why don't you take it away?
All right, let's do it. This film comes from the year 2002. I have done the year 2002 a few times, but it's been a while, so I figured why not jump back into 2002.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, the movie that I was battling in my brain about, either this one or this other one, was also a 2002 movie. So regardless, one of the movies that I chose was going to be from the year 2002. This movie stars Al Pacino, Robin Williams, and Hilary Swank. This movie is written by Hilary Seitz. The original
I thought you were gonna say
screenplay...
Hilary Swank. I was like, what?
No. The original film, which in doing my research, I found out that this was a remake of a movie, from 1997, written by Nikolai Frobenius. Probably got that wrong.
I mean, that was a great attempt, though. I can't even tell you what it would have been.
And Eric Skogelberg. So forgive me again, fellas,
that was
if you
great.
ever hear this, if I'm pronouncing your names incorrectly. This movie is called Insomnia.
So it was probably an adaptation into the English language?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it was.
Okay.
The original comes to us from Norway, which I'm a big fan of that country. A lot of the thrash metal I listen to comes from Norway, so I can only imagine that the movie is awesome. And it stars Stellan Skarsgård, so how can it really be bad?
Yeah. Oh, God, we need to watch that film.
I think we do. I think we're going to have to go back and do that, maybe
Yeah.
for our next foreign film episode.
All right.
So Insomnia, like I said, is directed by Christopher Nolan. I've now done 3 Christopher Nolan films in 2 years, so that's one every 8 months. I originally began with Tenet, did Memento very recently, and now jumping into Insomnia, which is a movie, again, that a lot of people are like, oh, that was a Christopher Nolan movie? I had no idea. I remember seeing the trailer, but I never saw it. Because right around then, Following and Memento were the only 2 movies that Christopher Nolan had come out with. Mm-hmm. So Insomnia comes to us, again, as a remake, produced by Steven Soderbergh, and actually, Steven Soderbergh was so impressed with Memento that's why Christopher Nolan got the job for directing Insomnia, because he thought that he would be the perfect director for this movie.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's break down Insomnia just a little bit without spoilers, because I forgot to mention in the opening of this episode of 118 episodes, we don't do spoilers here at Movies You Miss Podcast.
That's right, we don't.
No, we don't, and we're not going to do it today, or with yours, as difficult as that, I'm sure, was for you.
It was
This will very likely be a little bit difficult for me as well.
One of the more challenging no spoiler days, that's for sure.
Yeah. So Insomnia is set in Alaska. There has been a murder of a young lady. Hilary Swank is the head detective, but we are introduced also to Will Dormer, played by Al Pacino. He has been recruited by this little police department in this small town of Alaska to come and investigate the murder of this girl. And the reason why he's also invited up here is because he knows the chief of police that runs this department in this small town in Alaska. And it's a very small town called Nightmute, Alaska. This young lady was 17 years old. Unfortunately, she was found clean as a whistle, which is, one of those things that is always interesting to me when watching true crime or reading a true crime novel, is like how the killer leaves the body. Like, was there care? Was there... I just always, for whatever reason, true crime is just so fascinating. And V, I know you and I have gone back and forth with discussing the possibility of doing a true crime movie. We haven't done an investigatory movie like this in a very long time.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you're right, as true crime fans, we always are thinking, especially when we watch true crime shows, and it's very natural, most people feel this way, how would I commit the perfect murder, right? Or how would I get away with it? Or, oh man, what an idiot, he left some evidence when we're watching some true crime
so
procedural.
Crazy.
And and of course we're like sitting on our couches like, oh, what an idiot.
Yeah. I remember there was one day my wife and I were driving down the freeway in Los Angeles, and this was after like a year and a half of just filling our brain with nothing but forensic files and true crime novels. She goes, over there would be a great place to hide a body. And I was like, whoa, baby. Whoa.
Hey, at least she wasn't thinking about your body.
I hope not.
Watching Forensic Files versus Snapped.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Oh, gosh, I know. But anyway, getting back into Insomnia, since, again, we are big true crime fans here, and it's so weird to be a fan of true crime, Like, you think, like, oh, that was such a good show. Is it good, though? They're just telling you what happened. Like, how can that be?
That's a question posed all the time by a lot of people, as someone who's been a fan of true crime since the 90s, since I was a teenager.
Okay.
I can tell you as a woman, and this is a common response from a lot of women as well.
Sure.
It's really good to plan out or know what might happen to us.
Okay, interesting.
It's all about doing research to prevent us from getting into that situation.
Sure. I completely buy into that 100%.
So that's where a lot of the motivation of women specifically liking true crime. Now, granted, that's not true across the board. That's not a blanket statement. I'm just saying that is a common reason. That is certainly the reason I watch it. Also, the other main reason I watch true crime, or just crime in general, I hate not being able to solve a puzzle.
Oh, okay.
I need to know the ending. I need to know the answers. And so for me, I like watching crimes being solved because I want that riddle answered.
Okay, I gotcha. That makes sense. So let's get back into Insomnia.
All right.
Like I mentioned, Al Pacino plays Will Dormer. He has been recruited to go into this small town into Alaska, Night Mute, to investigate this murder of a 17-year-old girl. Hilary Swank is the new up-and-coming detective in Night Mute. She has also studied everything that Will Dormer has done in Los Angeles. She's a big fan of his, so she is very excited to actually get a chance to work with Will Dormer, played by Al Pacino. Will Dormer is also told that in Night Mute, the sun actually does not go down. So, unfortunately, there's not going to be a lot of dark nights. So every night he ends up not being able to sleep, but right before he's able to sleep, he gets a phone call, with a new piece of evidence or something like that from Hilary Swank's character. She plays a character named Ellie Byrne. Over the course of time throughout this investigation, we are introduced to Walter Finch, played by Robin Williams, and we're actually introduced to him about an hour into the movie, which is pretty interesting, I gotta say, for a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
Like, we don't get to experience Robin Williams in another movie where he is not playing the typical Robin Williams character. And I think that actually works really well because of course, we've seen the trailer. You know that Robin Williams is in it. We don't know who Walter Finch necessarily is in this movie and, in this investigation. And once we are introduced to Walter Finch, this movie becomes a very twisted game of cat and mouse played between Will Dormer and Walter Finch. While Ellie Byrne is trying to do more of an investigation, Will Dormer is trying to figure out who exactly Walter Finch is and why he's so fascinated with Will Dormer himself. And for the rest of the movie, we're treated to a very twisted murder mystery thriller and a performance by Robin Williams that really does make your skin crawl.
Oh, God, that's an understatement.
Yeah. So, V, I know you haven't seen this movie ever. I think this was my third viewing of this movie. I saw this movie in theaters. I went and saw this after seeing The Lord of the Rings. Actually, my buddy and I movie hopped, which I don't necessarily condone, but I was a stupid kid in high school and remember my buddy being like, let's go see Insomnia. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's that new Robin Williams Al Pacino movie. Yeah, let's check it out. And we walked out of the theater just like we could not stop talking about it. And I think about 8 years later, I saw it again. Again, this movie came out in 2002, and now this is my third time watching it. And before I get into what I think of the movie, V, I'm very curious what you thought of a Christopher Nolan movie that you've never seen before.
It is a Christopher Nolan movie I've never seen before, so I crossed that off the list, which is very nice. Made me very happy. It's funny, you've seen The Rock 3 times as well. So last week's movie, it's the same note.
Yeah.
That's cool. The scenery was absolutely gorgeous. I love Alaska. I love where they filmed this movie. The funny thing is, at one point, Al Pacino goes to a different small town.
Yes.
That town is actually right outside of Vancouver.
Yeah.
I've been to that town. I recognize the street. My sister and I visited that town when we were exploring Vancouver a couple years ago.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, which is kind of funny.
Well, I don't want to burst your bubble, but the entire movie was actually shot in Canada.
There were external shots in Alaska, weren't there?
There were exteriors of Alaska,
exterior,
but none
that's
of
what I
the
meant,
on
yeah.
the ground with the
No,
actors
no.
was actually done in Alaska proper. So
Yeah.
no, unfortunately.
The flight, though, during the
Yes.
opening credits, oh, God, the glacier and everything, that was gorgeous.
Oh yeah, so awesome.
I love Al Pacino as a cop in general. Of course, as a lot of you know, I picked Heat multiple
Yes.
episodes, lots of episodes ago now, but he's a
Yeah.
great cop in that. He just had that gravelly voice really grabs you. And
Yeah.
you can always feel this edge to him, this instability where you can't really trust that he's not just going to beat a confession out of you. I don't know. There's just
Right?
something
I
about
know.
him that's
So
so
true.
threatening that I
Oh,
would
yeah.
confess to anything if he was
I
questioning
know
me.
the way he uses his eyes, especially in that scene when he takes the kid out of his class,
Yeah.
and he like pulls the
Desk?
desk
Oh, that's
forward.
so good.
Oh my gosh, I'm just like, okay, this kid's about to literally get his neck broken.
Yeah, I mean,
Like-
he's going to piss his pants. His
Yeah.
little bravado act is certainly going out the window because
Oh yeah,
how can you back tough in front of Al Pacino? So I
Seriously.
really love that part of it. And there are multiple chase scenes in this movie that are great. They're
Oh, yeah.
full of tension. I was certainly at the edge of my seat, especially when they're running over all of those logs.
oh my gosh, that sequence. Oh,
So
yeah, that's
good.
a wild 4-minute scene later on in the movie.
Yeah. And the crazy thing is, the first documentary I ever made was about logging in Northern California in the 30s.
Really?
Yeah, it was a very fun
Wow.
film. I really enjoyed making it. My mentor, Mitch Mendoza, was so helpful with me creating this film. And I learned a lot about logging back in the day. And one of the things I learned that I still remember,
Yeah.
the most dangerous part of logging for guys back in the day, and where the most deaths occurred, was when the logs were in the water.
Oh no way.
Just like that scene.
Oh
Because
gosh.
they would spin in the water, you'd get trapped underneath them.
Oh.
And so that's a real thing, and it really was super dangerous. And it just popped into my head when I was watching that scene. I was like, God, this is so bad. Oh my God. Like, I was freaking out during that scene because I was like, I know how crazy dangerous this is. So,
Yeah, that's wild. I had
Yeah.
no idea. It looks so easy.
yeah. So a lot of realism in this film, which I really appreciated.
Yeah.
I have a lot of trouble falling asleep. Once I am asleep, I sleep through the night. It's fine. But falling asleep is extremely challenging for me.
Oh, interesting.
And I really loved a conversation earlier in the movie, well, about an hour in, as you've said, between Robin Williams and Al Pacino. And Robin Williams says, "There's nothing as lonely as not sleeping."
Oh yeah.
It
That's
feels
a good line.
It feels like the whole fucking planet is deserted.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so true. I feel that same way when I'm up at 3 a.m. and everything's quiet. I feel like I'm the only one out there. And it was just such a great comment on being awake late at night. And it really stuck with me. So I wanted to mention it. But I cannot believe this movie is from Christopher Nolan.
I know, right? Yeah, it does not feel like a Nolan movie.
At all. It just feels like a standard run-of-the-mill cop thriller. It's good. I really enjoyed my time. I don't know how many times I'll watch it again in the future because I thought it was a little too linear.
Okay.
I didn't think it was complex enough. I didn't think there was enough subplots to help move this story along.
Sure.
And so because of that, I would give it about a 7 out of 10. It's great acting. Like I said, I love the scenery. I love the setting. It's a cool story, but it needed a lot more depth for me personally.
Sure.
And so that's where I got a little bit hung up. But otherwise, I'd certainly recommend it for people who haven't seen it before, who like this style of film, who like a crime thriller, who like something dark and intense.
Sure.
Those two together, I was blown away by how good of a job they did together. Their chemistry was great.
Yeah. They did a lot of the scenes with both of them were fantastic.
Mm-hmm. Those were my favorite parts of the movie, for sure.
Sweet. And I'll agree with you. I remember when I first saw it and I left the theater, I'm like, yeah, that was a good movie. But at the same time, very similarly, like it felt like it was lacking something. Like there was something that wasn't really like fully grabbing me into that world, if that makes sense. Where there's a lot of like Silence of the Lambs or Zodiac or something like that, like something that or Fight Club or Seven, like just these movies that you're like, that are supposed to be really creepy and not discount Robin Williams' performance. He certainly is a creepy guy in this movie.
Yes. Very believable.
But there was still something. And even after this watch, again, I still enjoyed the movie, but it's like, it's the only Christopher Nolan movie I don't own.
Okay.
And there's a reason for that. There's something that's just preventing me from being like, yeah, I'm going to own that one and have the entire Nolan collection. You know, like it was his first true studio movie. Like
Okay.
you put it, you know, you think about it that way. So the
Yeah.
studio was very likely involved.
Ugh,
whereas
too much probably.
now, yeah, he literally can do whatever the hell he wants and the studio stays out of it. So I think that might have been it as well. I mean, you know, he had following in Memento under his belt. Memento put him on the map. He got an Oscar nomination for it. And this movie has 3 Oscar winners with Pacino, Williams, and Swank. So there's a lot of good potential in this movie. And again, it's not a bad movie. It's still a good movie. But yeah, there's something about it that's like, there should have been a little bit more weird time bending, I guess, you know, with what we've been so used to with Nolan, even before this movie came out.
It just seems a little too straightforward for me.
Yeah, exactly. It's very,
not-
like you said, it's very linear. It is
Yeah.
very much kind of like an episode of Law and Order.
Yes,
And, you
great
know,
analogy, yeah.
Yeah, but
Which-
again, and that's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad
still-
thing, exactly.
Yeah, it's good.
But it is definitely, I think you're right, though, with the studio interference. It feels a little too polished, especially
Yeah.
for Nolan, right?
Right,
Nolan would have had some weird, complex something happening, I mean, based on
Exactly,
all of his other
yeah.
movies, including Memento, which, as you said, was before this, right?
Yeah.
Somebody must have come in and be like, no, this had a big budget, this has multiple Oscar winners, we have to make sure it's exactly like this, and this producer comes
Exactly,
in and
yeah.
does something stupid, which is like cut out 15 minutes of the movie that would have made it
Right.
totally amazing or something, right?
Right. No, 100%. Completely agree with that. Like I said, I still don't own it. I've wrestled with the idea since 2002. Like, do I want to own that movie or not? And I guess I don't. So I.
But it's still solid, like you said.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
it's,
it is.
It's definitely worth watching for people who haven't seen it before. It's a great film to watch by yourself late at night one night when you're just like,
Yeah.
oh man, what do I watch? It's you know, it's fall. It's starting to get a little darker at night. And what should I watch? Oh man, put this film on. You'll like it.
Sure. Yeah, totally. Yeah, you know, and then you go and watch Forensic Files or some true crime series after the movie
Dateline.
ends.
Yeah.
Yeah, or A Current Affair, like in Dumb and Dumber.
Yeah.
But anyway, well, that's good. I'm glad you enjoyed your time and you don't feel like it was wasted and it
No,
wasn't
not
a
at
movie
all.
that you hated. So that's always a very good thing and another win for me here at Movies You Missed Podcast.
Yeah.
118 episodes.
I certainly recommend it to my mother and my sister Shannon.
Oh, cool. Awesome.
We all watch Dateline together when we're at my parents' house. It's great.
I remember my parents and I would like watch 2020 and then, you know, it would be like Law and Order and then all those fucking cop shows and murder shows. Even my wife and I now, you know, we love to watch the true crime documentaries and stuff
Awesome.
like that. Yeah, so let's get into a little bit of the behind the scenes. I was not able to find a whole lot, which is again very linear for Christopher Nolan.
Weird,
You know, like there's
yeah.
so much BTS between like Memento and Inception and The Prestige and The Dark Knight and all of his movies.
This whole thing feels sanitized.
That's
It's
a good way of putting it.
like
Yeah.
some producer came in with an alcohol swab
Oh,
to this whole movie, and like you said, even the behind the scenes stuff is lacking.
yeah.
I want Christopher Nolan, now that he can do whatever the hell he wants, because he's a god,
Yes.
he's a directing god,
Yeah.
I want him to go back and recut this movie.
Oh, I would love a director's cut of Insomnia.
Right?
Absolutely. Yes.
I think then
feel-
we'd get
yeah.
the film that we want, and the one
think
that
so.
maybe he wanted too?
It's very possible. Yeah. If I ever meet him, that'll be one of my first questions. Be like,
Oh.
so Insomnia. Let's go back to Insomnia. Let's talk about that. And just read his reaction. you
Yeah,
know? Like,
exactly.
It's like, oh boy, here we go. Or if it's going to be like, oh, I love that movie. Because I couldn't find anything about his own opinion of the movie.
Yeah, that's
where like
weird.
he loves Tenet, he loves
He
Inception,
loves talking about
he loves
his movies.
Interstellar.
In a good way.
Absolutely.
In a good way.
Yeah, and this is one of those movies that he does not usually talk about.
I bet he had a bad taste in his mouth from the studio because of
It's
this.
possible.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which is also interesting because after this movie, he went on to work with Warner Brothers for the next like decade and a half.
Until Oppenheimer.
Right up until Oppenheimer.
Until
exactly.
they shit the money bed, my friend.
Yes. But the production of this movie actually did go pretty swimmingly. Robin Williams and Al Pacino got along fantastically.
Oh, good.
They
I
had
was-
a great time making the movie together.
Really curious about that.
Yeah, right? I know, because you hear like Tommy Lee Jones
what I
and
was
Jim
thinking,
Carrey
yeah.
and yeah. And I was just reading something on Twitter today about James Caan absolutely hating and just dog shitting all over Will Ferrell during the shooting of Elf because he was like, you are just overacting. This is not happening. Yeah. And then, of course, he's like, all right, you were amazing. The movie's fantastic. So, of course, now, you watch Elf this year. Now, of reading this, you're like, oh, yeah, fucking James Caan hated being on set every day.
Not surprising.
And nothing against Will Ferrell, but, I'm not the biggest fan. But he can be funny. Anyway, so yes, Pacino and Williams had a great time working on the movie together. There was a little bit of intense back and forth between Nolan, Williams, and Pacino because Al Pacino is a very meticulous preparation type of an actor. He wants a lot of character motivation from the director. He wants to do a lot of takes. Yeah, exactly. What's my motivation? Hey, what's my motivation? I can't do a very good Al Pacino.
That was actually pretty good.
Everybody always goes to the hoo-ah, I can't. That's I still have not actually seen Scent of a Woman. Yes, but very cliche. And then, of course, they do the big ass from Heat. But anyway, so that was Pacino's approach to the movie. Robin Williams actually was a little bit more on the let's not do a whole lot of rehearsals, let's not prep too much, let's kind of go on the fly. Not so much improvise, but he wanted to do a lot of takes similar to Al Pacino, whereas Hilary Swank was very much of let's do a few takes so we can all stay focused on the next couple of scenes that are coming up. Now, granted, this is a big Hollywood production, so I'm sure very similar to the movies that VU and I used to work on. There was not 14 to 15 scenes a day and 30 pages of, material to be shot. But still, Swank, had her whole thing. She had just come off winning the Oscar for Boys Don't Cry.
Oh, so good.
I still have not seen Boys Don't Cry. I got to check it out. It's been on my to-watch list for many years. I just have not gotten around to it yet. I know it's a very devastating movie,
You
though.
will cry, yeah.
Oh, well, I guess the title is misleading
It
then.
is, very.
All right, well, we'll see what happens when it does come down to that. But I thought that was kind of cool at the same time. All three of them had their own approach, which
totally
why
different
not?
styles,
They're all actors. They're Oscar winners. And again, before this movie, I don't think I had seen Hilary Swank in anything because $1 Million Baby had not yet come out. I was a big Robin Williams fan and a Pacino fan by then. But anyway, this is the first Christopher Nolan film where he actually does not have a writing credit on.
No wonder. See,
yes.
That's what we need. We
exactly
said
right.
Something was missing.
Something was missing.
We might have found it.
He did not get involved in the writing of the script of this movie.
Oh man,
Which,
because it was adapted from a foreign film. Oh,
yeah,
good
it was a
opportunity
remake.
for him to put a little
right.
Christopher
that's
Nolan
why
twisteroo.
We need.
Yeah,
that is why we need a Christopher Nolan director's cut.
Yes.
I don't think he's actually put one out of any of his movies. And I think that's
Well,
also speaking to the way that he makes his movies.
Yes. He
But
has
at
to
the same
storyboard
time-
the hell out of all his
Yeah.
movies except this
Tenet,
one.
Inception, Interstellar.
Memento.
But this one does deserve a director's cut. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, if I ever meet him, if anybody out there has ever met him, been on set with him, or is going to work with him in the future, look him in the eye and tell him that we need an Insomnia director's cut. That's all we need.
Yep.
This was the second thriller of 2002 that Robin Williams actually came out as an actor in. I almost chose this movie because it is almost never talked about, but it's a creepy-ass film where he plays a photo developer at a convenience store, kind of like Rite Aid or CVS. It's called 1 Hour Photo. The movie is a complete trip. I remember watching it and just being completely creeped out by it.
I haven't ever seen it, but I remember both of these films coming out the same year with the trailers and just knowing it's Robin Williams being something completely antithetical to the characters he normally plays.
Oh, yeah.
And I was curious, but at the age that I was in the early 2000s when these came out, I wasn't quite interested in seeing Robin Williams out of character.
Absolutely. No, completely agree.
But as an adult now, oh man, I was eating this up that he was playing something so out of the realm of what we're used to.
Yeah, no, completely. I will always remember the trailer and being like, Robin Williams? Interesting. That's just
and
so
he was
weird.
good. He's good
Oh,
in this
yeah.
type of role.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, he's very good.
100% believable. That was the thing, is that nobody does a bad job in this film. I have no critique whatsoever about the acting in this movie.
Right.
It purely came down to the
agree.
writing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I know, it makes me wonder like what the morning talks were like. Pacino like, hey, Christopher, hey, I don't know if I want to say this line. And he's like, well, unfortunately, the studio's making you say those lines.
That was pretty good.
All right. And then, I could just imagine Pacino being like, all right, fuck it. Hoo-ah, let's do this. Yeah. I did my hooah for all of our listeners. We did mention that Robin Williams does not show up about an hour into this movie, and I think that's actually a really cool thing, too, because it's not like right away he gets to Alaska and then all of a sudden we're thrown into this thing. It's not like this long, drawn-out, 2 hours of cat and mouse. It's literally about 45 minutes of it. But
I agree.
It just like the pacing of this movie is still good.
It is.
And on top of the cast, I think it just kind of, again, falls down to the writing and the adaptation of, can we remake a movie that is so popular from the 90s? And there was one actor that was in consideration for Will Domer before Al Pacino was cast. He is an actor that we love. He is in multiple franchises. He was recently in the 5th of a franchise that came out last year.
Harrison Ford?
Yes, Harrison Ford was in talks to play Will Domer.
That would have been so good. That would
have been awesome.
He's amazing as a cop. If anybody hasn't seen Witness yet, watch that film.
Definitely.
I would have paid money to see that version too. I mean, both would have been great casting choices.
I completely agree. But I am glad that we got Pacino.
He's darker, which I think fits the story and also playing off Robin Williams better because you need absolutely no humor in this film in order to get past the fact that it's Robin Williams.
No, I completely agree. And I think like if Harrison Ford were in it, there would be a lot of disconnect. Like, oh, well, it's Indiana Jones. It's Han Solo. You know, it's like... And nothing against Harrison Ford. We love him in outside of those movies. But Pacino hasn't done a franchise type of a movie like that.
Right. He's played a cop so many times, we just automatically accept him as the cop, right?
Yeah, exactly. And he's awesome.
He is.
Another director was in consideration to direct this movie before Christopher Nolan got it. Jonathan Demme was considered to direct this movie, which I think he could have done a pretty good job too. Yeah, and for those of you that may not know him by name, he directed Silence of the Lambs, Philadelphia, The Manchurian Candidate, a handful of movies from the 90s that are mostly very good.
Do you know what's funny? After I finished this film, I actually thought of Denis Villeneuve because of Prisoners.
Oh, interesting. Ah, all right. I could see that. Yeah, it kind of had a little bit of that feel to it.
Think of the color scheme in this film.
Sure.
Lots of grays, dark blues. It was kind of perfect for Denis.
Yeah, that's true. The DP of this movie was Wally Pfizer, so, I mean, he was Nolan's DP for years before he switched over to Hoyte van Hoytema. And, I mean, I still think Wally Pfizer is a fantastic cinematographer. There's a lot of great camera work in this movie.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
The scene on the ferry where Dormer and Finch actually meet for the first time was not rehearsed. Robin Williams and Al Pacino wanted there to be an unfamiliarity to each other that day that they were shooting that scene. And I gotta tell you, that scene it's a long one. It's a slow burn, nothing but very key dialogue, and it's fantastic. I love that entire 9 to 10 minutes of them on the ferry, especially at the end of it when there's that goddamn reveal where you're just like, oh, man. And no spoilers, but, if you haven't seen the movie, now you got to see the movie to know what we're talking about. But V, you know what I'm talking about.
I agree. I do think that's the best scene in the movie, too.
Yeah.
And very similar to Heat, Robert De Niro and Al Pacino insisted on not rehearsing that diner scene because they needed that unfamiliarity with their two characters as well.
Yeah, awesome.
And that was released in 95.
So cool. There you go. Hell yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, it's so badass. Now, this movie is called Insomnia, mostly because this is the land of the midnight sun, which is a true thing. Will Dormer is unable to sleep because of the fact that it's so light out and not dark. There was a study done years ago, and the subject actually was awake for 11 days. Now, this was all under medical supervision, so that was fine, but the guy ended up finally going to sleep. But scientifically, outside of that test, the human body can actually stay awake for 6 days before things start to get a little weird. And watching this movie, I completely felt that. I mean, I've been awake maybe 2 days at a time, almost maybe 3. And even getting up, like sometimes at 5 o'clock in the morning and then still being up at midnight, I just feel just so out of whack. I don't hallucinate or hear things, but I'm also able to get to sleep pretty quickly after being awake for maybe 2 days. So I thought Pacino played the insomniac portion of this movie very well as well.
Yeah, I remember reading a study about how if you're awake for more than, say, 20 hours or so, you start to actually be as impaired as someone who's legally drunk for like a DUI.
Oh, wow.
And I agree. My brain starts misfiring after being awake for about 22 hours, and
Oh, damn.
Yeah, you and I have talked about this before, where we've each stayed awake for a couple days in a row, and it's, you just really, you can tell your body is not functioning the way it's supposed to. It needs sleep, right? Which sucks.
It does. Yeah.
But the funny thing is, on the flip side, this year, a cop show came out, which is the opposite of this film.
Oh.
Night Country, which was on HBO, True Detective Night Country, this season.
Oh, that's right.
Had Jodie Foster in it.
Right.
They're in Alaska in the wintertime where it never gets light for like 14 days in a row.
Oh, my gosh.
So if you want a cop story that's the flip side of this, when it's all dark, watch Night Country. It's on HBO.
All right. I actually, wanted to watch Night Country. I have not gotten around to it yet.
It's great. The first couple episodes are awesome. It lags a tiny bit in the middle, and then the last couple episodes are awesome. So I highly recommend the series.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Now, going back to the relationship of Robin Williams and Al Pacino, like I mentioned, they did get along very well during the making of this movie. So much so that Robin Williams played a prank on Al Pacino at one of the press junket interviews for the release of this movie. During a moment where Al Pacino was answering a question from a reporter, Robin Williams ended up sneaking up behind him. After Al Pacino was finished with his answer, Robin Williams started to recite his end monologue from And Justice for All in Al Pacino's voice. And Pacino thought it was so great that he actually started lip-syncing Robin Williams doing his voice. And everybody thought it was one of the funniest things they'd ever seen and just gave him a massive round of applause.
That's awesome, and
I
good
know,
on
I
him.
would have loved to see that.
Yeah, especially because press tours for a movie get so monotonous because every reporter asks you the same exact question.
Right.
So many actors have told me that they hate press tours for films because it's the same. It's like Groundhog Day.
Yep, exactly. Same shit, different day.
So if you're ever a reporter and you're asking actors questions during press tours, try to think of something original.
Exactly. This movie came out May 24th of 2002. The budget for it was $46 million.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, domestically it grossed $67.3 million.
Mm-hmm.
And worldwide $113.7 million. So it did pretty damn well.
I don't remember this being successful.
I don't in the U.S., but again, this is a remake from a Norwegian movie, so I imagine a lot of Norway and Europe was like, oh, a remake of this.
Yeah. Well,
Insomnia, I don't know what it was called in Norwegian.
Well, and it had two really big names attached to it that I'm sure a lot of people internationally could be drawn to the theaters just to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Why wouldn't they release this in September or October, though?
Oh, yeah, I don't know. Who knows?
This seems like a good...
Why do studios release movies when they release them?
But this seems like a good fall movie, right? You know, a creepy crime thriller. I mean, they did well, so obviously they released it at the right time, but personally, I think they should have released it.
Yeah, it might have done better released in fall.
Yeah.
And by the way, the film in Norway was called Insomnia.
Oh, there you go.
So there really wasn't a whole lot of a difference in the name.
Okay.
But anyway, 2002, that is Insomnia, starring Al Pacino, Robin Williams, and Hilary Swank, directed by Christopher Nolan. The highest-grossing film of the year of 2002. If you don't remember, I have done 2002 a few times here, but it's been a while. Spider-Man was the highest-grossing film. Number 2 was Star Wars Attack of the Clones. Number 3 was Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. Number 4 was Signs. Number 5 was My Big Fat Greek Wedding. Number 6 was Lord of the Rings: Two Towers. Number 7, Austin Powers: Goldmember. Number 8, the never-talked-about Men in Black sequel, Men in Black number 2.
So... A couple weeks ago, my sister Shannon introduced our niece Jillian to the Men in Black series, which I was so pumped by. She did it after our episode of Men in Black, actually. She's like, oh, awesome. Jillian's going to stay at my house this weekend, so we're going to watch Men in Black. I said, great. Skip the second one.
Yeah.
And she said, too late. And I go, no! You ruined it.
Oh, darn.
But thankfully, it was all redeemed because they watched the third one.
Yes, as always.
But
such a great third trilogy.
She did text me back and go, you guys were right. It is one of the worst movies ever made.
Yeah, it's so bad. It's so bad. 9th highest grossing film of 2002, Ice Age, a great animated movie.
Mm-hmm.
The 10th highest grossing film, A Beautiful Mind, with Russell Crowe and Jennifer Connelly. Fantastic movie, directed by Ron Howard.
Mm-hmm.
And the 38th highest grossing film in the domestic box office for the year 2002. My pick this week, Insomnia.
Hey, top 50. That's awesome.
I know. I know. It did pretty good. No. Neither did I. Not at all. I remember when I saw it in the theaters, it was like me, my buddy, and like 4 other people. So, yeah, it was really cool. But we also went to a theater that nobody really went to in the city that I was going to high school in.
And you snuck in.
I sure did. So that is Insomnia, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for this in memoriam episode of Robin Williams 10 years after his passing. We do still miss him very much, and we were going to talk a little bit about his past credits. Some of my favorite ones are obviously Mrs. Doubtfire, cannot forget Aladdin. I love him in 9 Months. The movie that I mentioned that he also starred in same year as Insomnia, 1 Hour Photo. He won an Oscar for Good Will Hunting. He's in a movie that a lot of people I don't think have ever seen, starring Mira Sorvino and himself, called Final Cut. He's also in a fantastic film directed by Terry Gilliam, starring Jeff Bridges, called The Fisher King. He had quite the career, and V, take it away with some of your favorites of his as well, because I'm sure they're great.
His first ever movie was Popeye.
Oh, I've never seen it. Oh, and rest in peace, Shelley Duvall.
Yes.
Very sad news.
He became famous in the TV show Mork and Mindy. We did, in fact, have rainbow suspenders in our house growing up. Again, that's why the Rainbow Tunnel in San Francisco is named after him.
Oh, okay.
He was also in The World According to Garp, Dead Poets Society, which I'm not a huge fan of just because I'm not Gen X.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either. I mean, it's fine. I remember seeing it in high school and being like, meh.
One of my all-time favorite animated movies, Ferngully.
Oh, yes.
He's also in Jumanji, which I almost picked this week, but
yeah.
there's opportunities to pick Jumanji in the future, so no worries there.
Definitely.
Father's Day with Billy Crystal.
Oh, yeah.
Really funny. Patch Adams, where he, again, plays a doctor. He was so good. I forgot to talk about this in my movie. I never saw Patch Adams. Oh, okay. It was really good, but I forgot to talk about this when we were discussing What Dreams May Come. He's so good at playing a doctor, especially a pediatrician.
Yeah.
He was also in a pick that John vetoed early on in the podcast. He's in a movie called August Rush.
Yes. I vetoed that one for sure.
Yeah, but I liked him in it.
I don't think I even got to him.
Probably not. You turned it off pretty early. But
yes.
Another movie I will be picking in the future that he stars in, which is probably my all-time favorite role of his just because it's so rewatchable and it's so fun. He stars in The Birdcage.
Oh, yeah. Great movie.
Can't wait to cover it on this podcast.
Same. One other movie I did forget to mention that makes me laugh hysterically every time, starring Robin Williams, Danny DeVito, and Edward Norton, Death to Smoochie. That movie where he plays Rainbow Randolph is absolutely fucked up and twisted as hell, but it is hysterical.
It is not rated really well
anywhere. No. A lot of people don't like it,
I've
but
never
I
seen
remember,
it.
Oh my God, it is so hysterical. It's so dark and
make me watch
funny.
it at some point, aren't you?
Probably, yeah. Only because Robin Williams truly is like the heart and soul of that movie. Okay. But he's so fucked up in that movie. It's great. It's awesome. If anybody's seen Death to Smoochie, please leave a comment on this episode. I gotta know if there are other Death to Smoochie fans out there because it is such a funny ass movie.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, the nice thing is, even though these are the first Robin Williams movies we've covered, they will certainly not be the last.
No, they will not. And again, happy birthday, Robin Williams. We miss you very much.
Every day.
Well, that wraps up our episode for Robin Williams in memoriam. V, I'm curious, would you watch What Dreams May Come with your grandmother?
That's a great question. I could.
Yeah.
Because it's a very intense film, but it's not graphic. There are no sex scenes. I don't know if there's even any swearing. There might be like one cuss word in the whole movie. I don't think there is, though.
Yeah, I think it's PG-13 because it's so heavy and intense.
Yeah. Intense thematic elements. Although it will never, ever eclipse, and nothing will, being rated PG-13 for severe weather. Twister.
That is true. Good point.
So it's possible. I just don't think my grandmother really would have enjoyed it. She wasn't into cerebral fantasy movies. She was more into westerns and stuff like that. I would watch this with my family, although we don't talk about death much in my family, so it'd be a little bit awkward. Right. But otherwise, I would recommend not watching this until you're at least 16 or 17, just because of the death themes.
Right.
You don't want to be traumatized too early with mortality.
No, exactly. Completely agree.
And John, would you watch Insomnia with your grandma?
Yeah, I think my grandmother would have liked it.
Yeah, it was twisted
enough. Cop drama. Yeah, for sure.
And again, I think 17 and above for that film?
Yeah, I would say 15 and above. I mean, it's not like super graphic or violent.
No, but a teenager's killed.
Yeah, teenagers killed, but, teenagers need to see that happens in the world. So,
I guess that's true.
Going back to our discussion about true crime and why you watch true crime.
That's fair. That's
what to avoid.
Good counterpoint.
Types.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And if you have not seen Insomnia and after this episode want to check it out, you can rent it on Apple or Amazon on pretty much any of the streamers.
Same with What Dreams May Come.
Awesome, which is what I did. I thought I had a DVD copy, but I think it's actually my parents'.
Bummer. I thought you had a DVD copy too.
Yeah, might have to get one now.
Yeah.
All right, well, again, that does wrap up our In Memoriam and Happy Birthday episode to Robin Williams. Looking forward to next week as well, because we're jumping into some lighter fare. We're going to have a lot of fun. V, why don't you tell everybody what you chose?
Getting back into the summer swing of things, we chose 2 sports movies next week that are both very funny.
Yes.
I don't think you've seen mine yet, though, right?
I have not seen your pick.
Another baseball movie I get to introduce you to. Fantastic. That
and
is
a comedy, no less.
one of my missions in this podcast, not only introducing John to Westerns, but also baseball movies.
Yes. It's working out so far.
So random. I never saw that coming, but here we are.
I didn't either.
I picked a movie from 1989 starring Charlie Sheen, Dennis Haysbert, Tom Berenger, and Rene Russo. This is Major League.
Nice.
My sister Shannon introduced me to this film. I believe we'll be watching it together next week, which is fantastic.
Awesome.
And if you want to follow along, you can watch it on HBO Max.
All right. Awesome.
And John, what sports movie did you choose?
I chose a very entertaining movie from the year 2000 starring Keanu Reeves. This will be my second Gene Hackman film.
Awesome. Always great to choose a Gene Hackman film.
Oh, definitely. This film also stars Orlando Jones,
That's right.
John Favreau, and Rhys Ifans. This is The Replacements, everybody, which I have not seen in a long time, but I used to have this movie, I think, on DVD, and I watched it all the time. It made me laugh so much. You can rent it on Apple or on Amazon Prime as well.
Great.
Yeah, I know. I'm excited. It should be a good episode.
Oh, I love that film. I'm really looking forward to watching it again. I haven't seen it in a couple years.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for joining us for episode 118. Please do rate, review, subscribe, follow us on all social medias, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. We love interacting with all of you. Thank you guys for continuing to watch all of my reels that I post while I go to the movies, even after I didn't go to the movies for so long. Felt great to get back to the movies this week. Looking forward to more coming up in the future. And as always, we love to close Movies You Miss podcast with film as a form of art, and in art, all opinions are valid. Except if you think
Robin Williams was only a comedic actor.
Ah, perfect. Oh, yeah, there's another movie that he's in that's really fucked up called The Night Listener. If you haven't seen that one, check that one out.
No,
that movie
I haven't.
is fucked up.
Okay.
Yeah, it's twisted.
Cool.
Sweet. All right, well, thank you guys again for joining us for episode 118. We will see you next week. Cheers, everybody.
Bye-bye.